What's the state of your website? If you're looking for a new digital experience platform or DXP to run your digital experiences, I have the book for you. The Agile Brand Guide to Digital Experience Platforms is part of my best-selling series of MarTech books. In this book, I explore and demystify DXPs and look at the roles a digital experience platform should play, the different types on the market, as well as how to initially evaluate platforms, then how to best implement a DXP once you've selected it. The book also features a foreword from Rupali Jain, Chief Product Officer at leading DXP provider Optimizely, as well as several other thought leaders in the industry. Learn more and get a copy in print or digital now by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to the Agile World podcast, where we discuss customer experience, employee experience, and transformation in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, a blueprint for creating an experience-led organization, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today, we're going to talk about keeping your company agile and the value of learning, iterating, and optimizing your business. Too many times, companies spend vast amounts of time and effort creating something that is either not exactly what the market wants or is not a feasible product or service for the company to offer as it grows over the long term. Instead, an agile approach of creating and learning while being continually open to change and improvement can yield the best results. Today, we're going to hear from someone who did just that and has built a highly competitive product while inventing new solutions to challenges along the way. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome David Wachs, CEO of Handwrytten, a handwriting service for brands. First, why don't you tell me a little bit about what Handwrytten does and what need it fills?
Sure. And thank you, Greg, for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here. So Handwrytten is actually my second company. The first one was a text messaging platform started back in 2004, I believe. And at the time, texting was a big deal and sending messages was a lot, was a nouveau thing. This was before the iPhone. And when I sold that company in 2012 and worked for the new owners for 2 years during the earnout, I was thinking about what else I could do. And I realized that as great as texting is, there's so much electronic communication. There's texts and hundreds of emails a day received by every office worker. And then now there's Slack and Twitter and Facebook. And it all became kind of noise. So I thought, what could I do to make a product or make a service that allows your message to stand out? And as I walked around between my office and my sales people's offices and other people's homes and office, I realized handwritten notes are not only kept, but are not only read, but they're kept. They're showcased on the back of people's bookshelves or magnetized to their fridges, or just kept on their desk and lost in the pile of paper there. So I wanted to try to figure out how to automate the unautomatable of handwritten old-fashioned communication. And that's what Handwrytten is. We are, I believe, the largest pen-based handwriting service in the world today. And we do this through kind of technology on both ends. On the front end, the user can upload notes to write and enter notes to write via our iPhone app, Android app, website that allows you to send OneNote or notes in bulk. We also have plugins for Salesforce.com, Zapier, HubSpot, and an API. We're coming out with a Shopify plugin soon, but quite frankly, it can all be handled via Zapier if you want to integrate with Shopify. So those are all the inputs on the platform and how you get notes to us. And then on the outputs, we use robots that we build in our facility in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm happy to, that I think is kind of our Agile story. Happy to talk about how we develop those robots. But these are laser cut robots with 3D printed parts, off the shelf components, etc., to create these machines that hold real pilot ballpoint pens and write out your notes at scale. Each robot can only write about as fast as a human, so we currently have 95 robots. And as we record this, COVID's going on, so we've taken a pause on building additional robots. But we were building between 1 and 2 a week to keep up with demand.
Wow.
These robots are all just kind of stacked in racks at our facility, and they're just spitting out notes. And then when those notes come off the machines, they're stuffed in envelopes that are also written by robots. Real stamp is applied, a real forever stamp or first class international stamp, and then your note is placed in the mail. Because we have the technology fully in-house, we can quickly iterate and create new handwriting styles to match our clients if they want that, or even just include their signature. In addition to writing the note, we insert clients' business cards, such as, regular business cards. We insert magnets, and then we have a full array of gift cards that can be added to any purchase as well. So if you want to add a Starbucks card or an Amazon card or Home Depot, we have all those in stock, and we activate those cards and insert them along with the handwritten note. So yeah, that's handwritten.
Great. Well, yeah, let's start out by talking a little bit about how you've maintained an agile approach with handwritten. So, what were some of the challenges early on, and how did you solve for them?
Well, the biggest challenge was developing our own handwriting robot. When we started, we actually used an off-the-shelf offering from a company in Virginia that provides what are called auto pens to government officials and that type of thing that want to be able to sign documents when they're not around. Those machines were capable of taking a note that was typed up in Microsoft Word and writing it out on a piece of paper, but the quality suffered. Anytime we needed a new font or handwriting style, we couldn't do that. We'd have to work with the company. And quite frankly, the biggest issue was working with the company. They, I guess, have certain licensing agreements in place or whatever that only allowed us to own so many machines. And this was seriously hampering our growth. And then the robots themselves, the quality was not anywhere near the realism that I wanted to recreate. So that started us on this journey probably 3 to 4 years ago now, of designing our own robot. Now, I have no idea, when I started this, I had no idea how to do that. I have a computer science background. I certainly don't have an electromechanical background. But I hired a engineering firm. We actually started with a guy moonlighting from Jet Propulsion Labs. So I figured, well, if he can literally land a rocket on a meteor, he should be able to, or a rocket on a comet. I can't remember. He did one of the two. I thought he should be able to make a handwriting robot for us. Turns out he was not the guy to do that. So we hired another firm out of Mesa, Arizona, which was very close to us. And they provided us a proof of concept robot that was very expensive to build, but at least we had one. And then the iteration process of trying to come up with a fully optimized solution kind of began. And what happened was, when this design firm provided us the first iteration of that robot, they helped me interview and hire a brand new graduate out of the Arizona State University. Our company is based in Phoenix, so ASU is a natural employment pool. We hired this kid, and I told him at the time, I said, this will be the best job you ever have, with the most experience, the most exposure, and most rope to hang yourself on. So he came aboard, started building these robots based off the spec provided by the engineers, and he had a background in 3D printing. And we started iterating, okay, what of these metal parts can we replace with 3D printed parts? And that started us down a journey where The very first part that we replaced, which was this metal box that housed all the electronics of the robot, that box alone on the robot, just an off-the-shelf box that we'd have to drill holes in and create a place for a screen and that type of thing, cost us $400. So the engineer came to me and he said, we can replace the first thing we replaced on that machine was that box. He said we could 3D print that box. And I said, well, that's great. How much is the 3D printer? And he said it was $500 on Amazon. This was before we became, we have the same quality 3D printers that we have now, and I'll get into all that. So I said, okay, $500. And I said, and how much would it cost in plastic to recreate that box? And he came up with the design. He said about $7 in plastic. So I said, sold. Let's get one of those 3D printers. And what that did was, from the very beginning, we were able to not only make that metal box, but make a few other parts. That meant with every robot we built, we more than paid for that $500 3D printer. And it also gave me a real itch with 3D printing. I thought, man, this is going to drastically reduce costs and have other benefits. So just real quickly on the benefits. So prior to 3D printing everything, which was also not the solution, and I'll get into why, but prior to 3D printing anything, we sent everything to a CNC shop. We actually use a company called Xometry. And Xometry is really cool. They take SolidWorks models, which are 3D models out of your engineering CAD software. They take those SolidWorks models, you upload them into Xometry, and they say, how many of each part do you want? You tell them how many parts you want, and they give you a price. Then, a few weeks later, maybe a month later, the parts arrive on your doorstep, kind of like the Amazon of 3D parts. And that's great. However, anytime you work with a CNC, which is, a milled, basically you take a big piece of aluminum and you carve it down and you carve it until you have your piece. It's very expensive in quantity one. So the only way to get costs down is to buy 20 parts of the same, 20 of the same parts at the same time. But when we're iterating these robot designs, for one, even when you buy 20 of them, they're still really expensive parts. Two, I didn't want to outlay the cost of 20 parts for every time we made a simple change. So by bringing it in-house and using 3D printers, we were able to iterate much faster. We also weren't so nervous to change the design, because if we changed the design in our 3D modeling software and for whatever reason we were wrong, we were out like $20,000 or something crazy because we bought all these parts. So by bringing it in-house with 3D printing, that was the first phase. Pretty soon we realized there were certain parts that were load bearing, and we couldn't just replace them with $500 3D printer printed parts. So we moved up that curve, and we bought a few very, very powerful 3D printers called Mark Forged. And these 3D printers are unique in that they don't make parts suitable for prototyping. They make parts suitable for manufacturing. So the parts that come off this crazy expensive 3D printer, it's, there's a part. It's not a prototype of a part. It has all the quality characteristics actually, they compare the part quality to aluminum. And, we were replacing aluminum parts with 3D printed parts with the strength characteristics of aluminum, which was, quite frankly, a little bit, we were oversold and we didn't need such an expensive machine. But our first one we bought, and it's great. And then we've bought other Mark Forged that were slightly less expensive that got the job done too. And we're no longer using those $500 printers. We're using some really great stuff.
So I guess just to follow on that, I think there's, it's really interesting to hear about the individual challenges that you're able to overcome through creativity. But the other thing I'd love to touch on is it's the mindset, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's, and we'll get into this a little bit more about, your background. You already said, you're not a mechanical engineer by background, but yet you were able to do, accomplish some really great things here. What's kind of mindset do you obviously have it yourself, but how do you instill that in team members so that they can help you?
I think I call it, I say it's genetic. I say it's a figure it out gene. And
Yeah.
you can kind of see it I've had a few employees that just have it. And you notice it on an interview if you hand them what I think is a relatively simple Microsoft Excel question, where you show them, cell A1 and cell B1. And to add them, you do A1 plus B1. And then you say, but if you have John in cell A1 and Smith in cell B1, and I'm telling you the concat operation is an and symbol, how do you get John Smith? You can give them that simple question. And if they throw their hands up in the air and say, I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah.
then they don't have the figure it out gene. But if they sit there and they at least give it a shot, and it is a pretty, I asked this question in interviews, and it's not a hard, it's just they have to take the time to think. And I think Americans, or maybe Westerners, are so programmed to Google it or to just recite back rote memorization that they don't take the time to think. And you have to be able to challenge yourself. And not every one of my employees has the figure it out gene, but I've been blessed to find several that do. And it's really just, it's one of these things where if after a few weeks of interacting with somebody and they don't have the figure it out gene, you kind of have to stop expecting them to have it and put them in tasks that don't require it, because otherwise you're just going to be super frustrated. But yeah, it's just this. I'm a tinkerer at heart, a bit of a nerd, and I'm not looking for nerds, but I'm looking for people that when I give them a question, they noodle on it and they don't just throw up their hands.
Yeah, it's almost a curiosity that.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally. I'm going to use your vocabulary, the figure it out gene, because I often struggle with that as well, with in hiring the right people and just finding even the right teammates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, let's switch gears a little bit. So I referred to this earlier. You started Handwrytten without being a mechanical engineer. You were able to figure it out, to use to use your words, and so I guess what's motivated you to why do that? I guess other than curiosity and everything. I mean, what's kind of motivated you to solve some pretty complex engineering challenges? And from talking with you earlier, it sounds like, I mean, not only have you solved some interesting challenges, but you've actually built a better product than than ever existed. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well. Just what's the motivation there for something that really, you could make the argument that, like a lot of people say, well, I'm not a math person, or I'm not a designer, or I'm not this or that. It's like, what kind of motivates you to do that?
For me, this Handwrytten has been a labor of love. I would not say the financial benefits have come flowing in from this company. But I'm trying to develop a product that I would use, and one where I can type in a note and select my business card and select a gift card and send it out to somebody, saying, hey, happy birthday or whatever, and automate that through Zapier. That's something I would use. But I would only use that service if I know that the handwriting is going to be maybe not perfect, but pretty darn close to perfect, where most people would not question if that handwriting is real. So really, it's just come down to, and I was fortunate enough to sell my first company. So my while I do want to certainly see financial gains from Handwrytten, it hasn't been this pressure on me to immediately turn around profits. So the main goal here has been developing a perfect product, not selling and getting rich on Handwrytten. So that's really been it. It's the frustration of working with these auto pen machines and not having them cooperate. And if the power went out, all the handwriting machines would just like, there was just a lot of stuff that would um, send these handwriting machines off into their own crazy town. So uh,
Yeah.
having all the software in house and having it all work and at a scale of 95 robots, all they could all be controlled by a single command and told all to shut down or reboot or flash the software. All that type of stuff is just, it's an intellectual curiosity for me. And then also being able to pass the test and have these notes go out and people be thrilled by them and not think they're actually written by a robot and can't believe it. That's really cool too. It's just a cool, it's like being able to turn your hobby of tinkering into a job. And when I like to tinker, um, it makes work easier. There's
Yeah.
still, I'm not going to say easy, because there's people issues and COVID issues, and and we do want this company to be big and profitable and pay people a lot of money to work there and generate jobs. But the first thing was, can we solve this problem of authenticity? And I think we have solved that. Um,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so what would you say you're most proud of then with how Handwrytten?
I'd say that the notes passed the test.
Yeah.
I'm also really proud of this robot. Just real quickly, and I don't want to
Yeah.
dwell on it. Beyond the 3D printing, we realized that wasn't good for everything. So then we moved to laser cutting too. So we've really learned the right tool for each job. And I'm not saying laser cutting and 3D printing is the end all for every business, because if you're a realtor, you probably like, what the heck am I going to use this for? But what's interesting about it is it's allowed us to recreate a manufacturing that's disappeared from the United States for the most part, or replace some very expensive CNC milled parts with rather cheap, quick turnaround parts. And it's allowed us to iterate over and over. And being able to design these robots and make quick changes. I can say to my engineering team, when the pen is resting and it's not writing out a note, it's sitting there in this little cup pooling with ink. Can we design a better cup? And we just draw it out in 3 minutes. And then 30 minutes later, off pops one of those new cups off the 3D printer. And it's just,
Nice.
it's very gratifying to have that happen. You know what I mean? To be able to see your idea turn from concept to reality in 30 minutes or 33 minutes in this case.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I guess what advice would you have for people that they have a great idea, but they may be hindered by those blockers that we talked about earlier. Whatever that may be, it's lack of technical knowledge, not thinking that they can do something because of their background, or lack of education in a certain topic or something. It's like, what would you tell them to do to achieve their goals?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think me being a programmer might be a bit of a hindrance to this company. So sometimes when you come in and you actually know a little less, it might be better. The reason I say that is because I involve myself way too much in the nuts and bolts. Like, I didn't build the robots, but I wrote all the software for those robots, and that is not the place where the president of the company should be.
Gotcha.
And what I think a better place is somebody, there's a great book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and he talks about working in the business versus working on the business. And the idea is, you get into business, let's say as a pie maker, because you like making pies, so you want to open up your own pie store and sit there and bake pies. But as soon as you get into business, your job should not be making pies. It should be supervising people that make pies. So, if you're looking to start your own venture, you shouldn't have to know how to make the perfect pie. You should just know what type of pie you want to make and be able to sit down and specify through a technical specification or an illustration, even what you want done. And then, thanks to the power of the internet, you can pretty much find anybody pretty quickly. For instance, with Handwrytten, we have a lot of developers for the non-critical part. I dare say commodity part, which would be an iPhone app, Android app, and website. Those are commodity skills.
Right.
And we hired those people through Upwork, which is a online platform that connects you to freelancers all over the world. So our programmers aren't located in the States for those components. And it's a cost savings measure. And it also just kind of, I go to one person and I get that whole solution handled. I don't have to herd cats and deal with a bunch of personalities. So that's so you can go on Upwork and you can find software engineers, you could find PR people, pretty much anybody you can find on a platform like that. In fact, the engineers that ended up providing us the final design, I didn't find them through Upwork, but I found a guy on Upwork that referred us to them. So it really is if you don't have the skills, but you have an idea, just draw it out and make it happen. Through my wife, she has another product too. It's this pet product. It's a mat that you place in front of the door when the dog needs to go out. They step on this mat. Sometimes they don't make noise. The dogs, they'll stand by the door and wait. And if you don't get them in time, they'll make a mess in front of your door. So this is it's called the barking mat. It's a doormat that you put on the inside of your house. When the dog goes to the door, they sit on that mat. The mat could say, good dog, or it could just send a notification to your phone alerting you of the dog needing to go out. That also was a Agile process of figure it out, Gene, where we found a embedded processor designer. We developed the prototype in the States. We took it to China. We didn't know anything about taking it to China. And now we know how to import products from China. And I would just say, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but when I was in college, I was fortunate enough to be on this committee that planned speaking events, and Conan O'Brien was one of the speakers we brought. And I went out to dinner with him, and his words of advice to us was always get in over your head. So maybe always get in over your head is kind of the same thing as have the figure it out gene. But just don't be afraid to tackle the problem yourself. I think most people, if they open themselves up to failure and they're willing to try, they can get to the solution. But so many people get paralyzed where maybe I'm misinterpreting paralyzation for lacking the gene. But I think people just need to take that leap and they need to give it a shot, because so many resources are out there now to be able to get a product manufactured in China without ever stepping in China.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that advice, and I couldn't agree more. Well, David, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing and maybe connect with you?
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm David B as in boy Wachs, Wachs. Or you can follow Handwrytten. It's at Handwrytten, and that's HANDWRYTTEN. Handwrytten.com is our website if you want to try it out. Sign up. Don't use Facebook or Google, but just actually sign up and use the discount code podcast. That'll get you $5 off or $5 credit towards your orders. And you can catch me on LinkedIn if you want to do that. Just search for David Wachs, Handwrytten, you'll find me.
Well, again, I'd like to thank David Wachs, CEO of Handwrytten, for joining the show. To learn more about both customer and employee experience, I recommend you go to my website at gregkillstrom.com and make sure to check out my latest book, The Center of Experience. More information is available on my website or wherever the book is available, like Amazon. Thanks again for listening to The Agile World with Greg Killstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Killstrom. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, from my website at theagile.world or on Amazon or other retailers. Until next week, stay agile.